Ladies and gentlemen, today I'd like to show you the W6N123561, a really robust mechanical sewing machine that comes with a stepless stitch width and stitch length adjustment. As you can see, everything on the machine is labeled in German, but the operating instructions are also available for download in English. The operating instructions are almost self-explanatory, so to speak. This machine also provides a stitch pattern selection. You only need to choose the program. The included programs are shown here. This is the backstitch button. On the left, we take off the casing and open the bobbin cover. You can see that the bobbin area is made of solid metal. At the top, you can see the throat plate with guidelines at 1, 1.5 and 2 centimeters from the center of the needle, respectively. They will help you when sewing straight lines. The machine is equipped with an automatic needle threader. This is not a matter of course in this price range, but it really makes your life easier. Up here we have the thread tension. When threading, you guide the thread around this hook. All the steps are labeled with numbers, so there's no need for you to memorize anything. This item here is not for sewing, it's the tensioner for winding the bobbin. If you flip the spindle to the right, all you have to do is pull out the hand wheel. You just pull out the hand wheel or push it back in. That's very easy now to activate the bobbin winder coupling. Let's get started on how to wind the bobbin. As I said, you just need to pull out the thread and push the spindle to the right. I'll briefly show you how to do that. This is the tension for winding. Just pull in the thread here, wrap it around a few times, or you can also pull it through the little hole in the bobbin from the inside out. Just give it a little guidance and start winding. Now it's running. Hold the spool down and off you go. Wind up as much thread as you need, then stop. Be sure to push the hand wheel back in, don't forget that. We often have customers calling and asking for help because the motor is running but the machine doesn't sew. If that's the case, the hand wheel is still pulled out. When threading, place the thread spool onto the spool pin. This machine comes with a spool rack with 2 pins, so we can also sew with twin needles. We'll start at number 1. Hold the thread tight. Thread around hook number 1, go down the right channel. At the bottom, guide it around number 2, and the left channel up to the top, and from the left to the right through hook number 3, and down again in the left channel. Above the needle, we have 2 more hooks. First, guide the thread behind the big hook and through the left small hook. Please use the left one for regular sewing. The right one is used for when you are using twin needles. Pull the automatic threader down. Guide the thread down and in front of the threader, around the little hook to the right side. I'll hold my hand a little further away, then from the bottom to the top. So now we see that the threader is holding the thread. Now I have to let go of both the thread and the threader, and the threader pulls a little loop through the needle eye to the back. You see? That was almost good. Let's do it again. Guide the thread upwards like this, then the threader pulls the loop to the back. Hold the loop right and that's it. Guide the thread to the back. Now I insert the bobbin into the case. The thread must hang down on the right side. That goes in there. And the next step is important. Pull the thread through the slit and around the tensioner. The thread must come out through this hole. Hold the bobbin tight so it doesn't fall out. And here's the crucial point. The arm of the bobbin case must fit into this groove. Insert it and make sure it really clicks. Did you hear that? Now the bobbin is in. Now grab the upper thread and release the lower thread. Turn the hand wheel once towards you, 1 full turn until the thread hook is up again. You can check that by doing the following. When you hold your little finger next to the hook, it must reach about the same height, depending on how thick your little finger is. Now that is okay. So now the bobbin thread has been pulled up. Guide it to the back together with the upper thread. Close the bobbin area and then we can start sewing. This machine is really robust. It doesn't have a 10-year warranty for nothing. I want to show you how to sew a really nice double seam on a pair of jeans. Just put the fabric underneath the presser foot. Then set A for straight stitch. Set the stitch length to 3, not too short, and then you can start. There's no need for pushing or pulling the fabric, it really works. That's that. It even manages really thick layers of fabric. At the end of the seam, make sure that the thread hook at the top is really fully out. If you're not sure about the beginning, put your little finger next to the hook. The hook is fully out. Lift the presser foot, pull out the fabric and cut the threads. No problem, that's no difficulty at all. Okay, let's put everything back in place. Now, if for example you would like to sew something stretchy like this, we still have the machine set to straight stitch. So we tried. For stretchy fabric, maybe we set the stitch length to 2.5. Let's stitch that up. You see, the machine is really stable, no wobbling or rattling, and it doesn't move on the table, that's that. Put the needle back up. Again, the thread hook must be fully up. Take out the fabric, cut the threads, and here's the problem. You want to put that on, pull it over your head or whatever, and the seam tears. The only chance we have, the machine not only comes with normal programs. Everything you can sew in normal stitch, you can also sew with a stretch stitch. So, how do you activate that? At the stitch length wheel, you turn to 4, and from there you turn on until the range for stretch stitch is at the top. There you have a plus and minus sign. Plus means that the stretch stitches are a little longer. Minus means that the stretch stitches are a little shorter. In the normal programs you have more options, of course. This is because the machine now sews back and forth 3 times. Let's take a look. You see, it sews back and forth really nicely 3 times, and then the seam is stretchy. Just a little more. Here too, the machine is stable, no rattling, no vibrating. And remember, turn the hand wheel until the thread hook is fully up. Take out the fabric, cut the threads, and now you can see, you can pull the fabric and nothing happens. What else have we got? If, for example, you want to sew a pair of jeans and want it to look as RTW as possible, you can use the same program, the triple straight stitch. On the jeans fabric, that looks like you've used a thick thread. In this way, you can work with normal sewing thread and don't have the difficulty that with thick thread the tension has to be adjusted. You don't have to use another bobbin thread or something like that, and you'll always be able to use thread matching in color. As before, the thread hook goes up, take out the fabric, and you see, it looks like an original jeans seam. These seams are also very durable. You can also use them for repairing crotch seams. Since we've sewn many thick fabrics so far, let's try something thin next. Let's try a rolled hem along this side. For that we use a regular zigzag stitch. Zigzag is C. Set the stitch length to 0.5 and the width to approximately 4. Now the important thing is to hold the thread at the back and don't push or pull the fabric. Hold the thread tight and press the pedal. The machine rolls in the fabric just fine. You can see that about half the stitch width is visible on the fabric. That means with stitch width 4, the needle moves 4 mm from one side to the other, but that only leaves a visible stitch width of 2 mm since the fabric is rolled in. So you can see, the result is very good. Of course, this only works with nice thin fabrics. So stop at the end, turn the needle all the way up. Make sure the thread hook is fully up. Check with your little finger. Take out the fabric, cut the threads, and now you can see that looks super clean and neat. So the next thing we want to do is to patch a rip. For this we use program D. This is the triple zigzag stitch. You simply set it up here. We leave the stitch length as it is and set the width to 5. With these settings you can easily patch ripped fabric. You always have to put some fabric underneath. Any kind of scrap will do. Just always remember to use a patch underneath, otherwise it won't hold together. Then you can mend the area really nicely. If the stitch is too long, make it a little shorter. You can easily adjust that as you go. Make sure to stitch over any loose fabric threads. As you guide the fabric under the presser foot, you can see that the mended area is quite firm and holds nicely. A little more. There, turn the needle back up. You see the correct height has been reached. Take it out, cut the threads, and then you see the area is closed. That's not a problem. The next thing I want to show you is an overlock seam. If you want to close a seam and at the same time finish it by overcasting, for this you can use your regular presser foot. Of course, you can also purchase an overlock foot for this machine from the W6 accessories range. The overlock foot has a bar in the middle and that prevents the fabric from puckering. If you often sew with delicate fabrics, this foot is definitely good value for money. The program we use is F. Just set the wheel to F. F must be sewn with stretch stitch. That means turn the stitch length to the red area stretch stitch and use full stitch width. Now close the seam and overcast it in just one step. As I said, the fabric I use is thick enough, so no problems here. If you are using thinner fabric or it starts creasing and puckering, just buy the overlock foot from W6 WERTARBEIT. It is available for this machine, that's not a problem. Take it out, cut the threads. Now let's take a look. Sewn and finished at the same time. Let's turn out the right side and you see it looks fantastic. In this way you can sew sleeves, for example. So let's do something else now, which is a nice applique stitch. This is program E. We'll just set the wheel to E. The stitch length is about 1 and we set the stitch width to 3. So now we are ready to go. We want to applique the blue fabric to the gray one. Let's go. Oops, I was a bit too far out here. Now I've got it. Just so to the right of the applique fabric, the needle will also move over to the left and stitch it. It looks as if it's been appliqued by hand. Alright, needle back up. See, I did it automatically. Now you see what a lovely seam you get. That's pretty neat. Now let's do a blind stitch. We are using the same program E. We just set the stitch length to 2, the width to 5, and we have to use the matching foot, of course. The foot is adjustable. We can set the foot to the fabric width. This also depends on the fabric thickness. You don't want to stitch to the fabric outside, so the stitch would be visible. You fold the hem of your fabric, as you can see here. We stitch the hem from the inside, so it's not visible on the outside of the garment. Lay the threads to the back, raise the needle a little. Now we are ready to go. The machine starts sewing, and every few stitches the needle moves over to the left to baste the hem to the garment. And of course we use the guiding edge of the foot to prevent the needle from moving too far into the garment fabric. Now the needle back to the top. As you already know, the thread hook must be fully out at the top. Take the fabric out, cut the threads. Now let's see how that looks. As I said, this is the hem. It's basted from the wrong side of the fabric. Now this is what the garment looks like from the outside. A neat, invisible hem. So it's a great thing. And it's still a firm seam. You can even try pulling it apart. I'll now show you what else you can do with that foot. The foot is perfectly suited for top stitching. We just have to change a few settings. We use a straight stitch, that means program A. Leave the stitch length at 2. Now as to the stitch width, the wheel has a second function. We turn it fully to the left. In the straight stitch, this is the needle offset. So that allows for fantastic top stitching. Just lay the fabric under the blind hem foot and off you go. The foot guides your fabric and ensures an even fabric edge. The needle back to the top, take it out and cut off. There it is. Looks pretty good to me. The next thing I'd like to show you is that we can also do some decorative stitches with this machine. Let's use a lovely blue fabric for this. Now the machine also comes with a special transparent presser foot, foot F. Install that. Now you can see through the foot onto the fabric. Also the foot has a channel at the bottom. Let's see if we can work this out. We use program I. Set the stitch length quite short, the width really big, and then we can start. What we have here is the so-called satin stitch. It looks really great. So let's take a look. Again, the needle goes up, take out the fabric and cut the threads. Now, this looks very nice and even. How did it turn out so beautifully? We have used double fabric layers. Now, if you're using only one fabric layer, that's not a problem either. With only one fabric layer, use some embroidery backing to stabilize your fabric and prevent it from creasing. Now, let's use program K, for instance. Right, you're using a single layer fabric with some embroidery backing. Always make sure to use embroidery backing with thin or single layer fabrics, otherwise it will pucker. The longer your seam, the prettier and more striking the effect of the decorative stitching. If you only have a few stitches like that, oh well, there's no decorative effect. Let's see. Take it out, cut the threads, and you see, that looks very neat. Also with just one fabric layer. The reason is the embroidery backing we used underneath, and the result is great. Now, if you need to sew stretch fabrics and you need to fold over an edge like this, because you need to repair your functional underwear, for example, then you choose program D again, just set to D. And the important thing in this context is, you must use super stretch needles in any case. Please don't use another type. Super stretch needles are essential, because otherwise it won't work properly. So what program do we have? That's D. We set the stitch lengths to stretch stitch and the width to 5. And with these settings, mending stretch fabrics is really easy. So straight over the middle, let's take a look. It's really nice and stretchy. That's due to the triple stitch. Alright, let's take it out. Now look. This is really neat and stretchy. You can pull that as long as the fabrics give. No snapping of threads. On the back we have neatly included the seam allowance as a side effect, so to say. Again, my recommendation, if you have delicate or tricky fabric, use some embroidery backing. It will really stabilize your fabric and prevent wonky stitching. Some fabrics really are a pain to sew. Make your life easier by using some kind of backing. It works like a charm and you don't have to spend hours pressing your seams. Well, one thing this machine also can do is to sew two fabrics together without them overlapping. In patchworking, for example. For that purpose we use program G. Just set the wheel to G. We'll stick with stretch stitch and we'll stick with width 5 as well. The fabrics are simply laid down next to one another, like this. That's the thing you have in patchworking. Just fold your fabrics neatly, this one and that one as well. Lay them under the presser foot close to one another, and thanks to the thread tension, the two pieces of fabric are pulled together. You don't have to do anything else at all. This overlock stitch is particularly suitable for this kind of work. Please do not use this stitch when sewing along edges. For that purpose, please use program F. This is much better suited. Now, this is what the finished seam looks like. The two fabrics are patched together and the seam is nice and stretchy. Nothing can go wrong. Next, I want to show you how to sew on a button. The machine is supplied with a cover plate for the feed dog. We are going to take the presser foot off, put the cover plate on here, and now, of course, we need the piece of fabric and also the button that we want to sew on. Just put the two in place. The button is now simply held in place by the shank. So now, of course, I have to choose C for zigzag stitch. The stitch length doesn't matter because the feed dog is covered and the width is about 3.5. It's best to check that before you start sewing. 1-2 turns of the hand wheel and now I can start sewing. So if you think that's tight enough, take the fabric out to the back, cut the threads, and that's it. You can see the button is really tight. It works. The next thing we want to do, if we can sew on a button, of course, we can also sew a buttonhole. To do this, remove the cover plate again and snap in the buttonhole foot. So pull the thread through the needle, and now let's see if we can sew a nice buttonhole. For sewing buttonholes, the machine provides a 4-step automatic function. We start at 1. Push the movable section of the foot all the way forward so that the arrow lines up with the red mark. Lower the foot. Set the stitch length between 0 and 1 and the width to 5. Please always set the width to 5 and don't change it while sewing. If you change the stitch width in the buttonhole, it will only affect the stitching and the buttonhole will never be even. So stitch width always set to 5. Let's start sewing. The first bit is forwards. When you reach the end, you stop. You need to determine how long you need your buttonhole to be, and that depends on the size of the button. Measure and mark that before you start sewing. Now stop, raise the needle. Set the automatic to 2. This will form a little tack at the end of the buttonhole. Just do 3 or 4 stitches, that's ample, and then turn to 3 to do the next bit backwards. When you've reached the beginning, set back to 2. 2 and 4 are the same program. 4 just symbolizes the tack at the other end of the buttonhole. And that's that, finished. Take out your fabric and you can see a perfect buttonhole for a mechanical machine. Just cut it open and you're done. The accessories of the 1235 model include a tape measure, a pin cushion and a pair of scissors. The cover plate for sewing on buttons is also included, as well as the buttonhole foot, the regular presser foot, the blind hem foot and the zipper foot. The transparent foot F I demonstrated before is not included. It can be optionally purchased from W6 WERTARBEIT as applique foot. If the machine jams because there is threads or fluff in the bobbin casing, or because the thread got stuck around the casing because the thread hook was perhaps not fully up, or perhaps the machine was set down hard once during transport. In any case, if you find that you can no longer turn the hand wheel, this is not necessarily a cause for alarm. Please turn off the machine, pull off the extension table, and then we need to remove this part down here. To do this, it is best to tilt the machine on its back. Gently tilt it and lure it on its back like this. Then remove the bobbin case. When the bobbin case is out, you'll find a black clamp on the left and on the right side respectively. Push both clamps outward and now you can take out these parts. If the parts can't be removed at this stage due to the thread jam, wobble and loosen them gently. So here we have the looper and the looper ring. During machine cleaning and maintenance, regularly oil the looper along this flat section. After removing any threads and fluff and cleaning everything, apply a few drops of oil onto the looper and put it back like this. You see, there is a fixed semicircle here, and the looper forms the other semicircle. Now take the looper ring. It's got a pin at the bottom and 2 pins on the face side. The bottom pin must be inserted into the recess. Now close the 2 clamps. It's important that each of the clamp latches over one of the pins. Snap. That's it, and your machine is fully functional again. Whenever a machine may become jammed, you can repair this yourself, as I just demonstrated. And whenever you take out the looper, you oil it. Now your machine is in great shape again and ready to use.